Did you know that pine cones can stay on pine trees for more than 10 years before falling to the ground? During that time, seeds for new pine trees grow under the scales of the pine cones. The scales protect the seeds from bad weather and hungry animals. Eventually, however, the seeds need to be released so that they can grow into new trees. To make sure that they have the best chance of finding fertile soil and growing into trees, the pine cone scales stay tightly closed when the weather is inhospitable to new seed growth. That is, when the weather is very cold and damp outside. In contrast, when the weather is hot and dry, the seeds will have an easier time finding good soil for growing into trees. In these conditions, the pine cone scales will open, allowing seeds to escape and drift away to find new ground to grow into new trees. The learning goals for this project are: I am learning how to show highlight and shadow. This can be achieved by using lighter shades of colors next to darker colors in the object. I am also learning how a pine tree creates more pine trees with pine cones. An evergreen tree is a tree that keeps its leaves or needles all year long. Yes, needles are leaves. I am also learning how to use line to create organic shapes from nature, just like Emily Carr was inspired to create. Words that we use a lot in this project are found in the word bank, scale, pine tree, needles, line, highlight, shade. Today we are going to draw a pine cone. Now there are so many different types of pine cone, but the one that we are going to look at today is going to be more of your traditional spruce pine cones. And I have one right here that you can see the coloring. It's darker on the inside, lighter on the outside. Here's another one. Now this one is interesting because it has these tiny little points on it. But of course, they're all brown. And these are opened. And the one that we're going to draw is going to be a little bit more closed with the little parts of the pine cone. The first thing that we want to do is we want to create kind of a base for our pine cone. And I'm going to say it's going to look like a curved line or a smile. And then we're going to start with irregular shaped curves. They don't have to be perfect. That's the beauty of nature. Is they're organic. Nothing is totally perfect. We may think they're perfect, but they're not. So I'm just doing these upside down U's, and they don't have to actually even be in the shape of a U. They can be kind of crooked and bent. I'm going to do one more here, and this is where it's going to stop. I'm going to do another one right here, and this is where it's going to stop. Okay, so I've filled in my first layer. Now I'm going to alternate. And how you do that is you just alternate between the first row, and you put in these irregular they're kind of a flattened U. They kind of look like teeth as well. And I'm just going to just keep on working. Now, this is going to be the widest part of our pine cone, and now it's going to get smaller. I'm working upwards. But the key is not to have your lines go in here, to stagger them, because they all aren't lined up. They stagger one another. And then I'm going to put one right here, and I'm going to put another one there. And then I'm just going to keep on working up. And they're just upside down U's. And then these end ones can have a little bit more of an irregular shape. And I'm just working up. Every time I make a row, the next row will have less little cups, little upside down U's. And I'm just working upwards. And this is getting me the base shape of my pine cone. I can put some that look like they're tilting outwards, because they do tilt outwards. And then I can even have a couple at the top. I might even put a couple more to fill in. And you'll know when to stop when you look at it and you see, okay, I think I have the shape. So if we refer to these kind of as teeth, they have more of an irregular design on them. So if you're looking at it, it kind of goes down and comes back up. So they could be irregular V's. Now I'm just going to add all those irregular V's. And I'm still working on those. And I'm just going to keep on working all the way up. And then just keep on. And they don't have to be perfect. That's the neat thing about the pine cone, is they're all a little bit different because they are organic. Organic means free-formed or found in nature. So they're not geometric shapes that are a lot of times perfect on both sides or symmetrical on both sides. And when I get to these tops, I'm just going to do the little edges. Okay, so I have my pine cone pretty well completed. And I can even go in and make this line a little bit more irregular. And then I can just go in and erase that perfect little line that I made. So now my pine cone's looking much more realistic. And they were just a bunch of upside down U's. We're going to then give him a branch. The branch is going to start narrow and even become even narrower. So we're not going to have a really thick branch. And now we're going to put those needles, which are the leaves. And those are going to be skinny. They're not going to be fat. They're very, very skinny. Like this one, I made it too fat. I'm going to go in and I'm going to erase. Yes, I am erasing. And I'm going to have, I want this one to be narrower because this is at the end of the branch. So make that one much more narrower. These are much thinner because they're really small too. They're just kind of, and they don't have to be perfect. Remember, you can have these irregular, but they're all going to be very skinny, super skinny. You can have some that go behind it as well, that bend out, that cross over too. They don't have to be perfectly spiking out. And when they get down in here, they get more spaced out. They're a little closer down in here just because that's the end of the branch. And over in here, these are more sporadic. Okay, and I think I'm going to put one right behind here. And you can't see it because it's overlapping. After I have this done, it's time for a Sharpie. And I'm just going to trace over everything because I want my lines to look really nice and crisp. Nice and crisp. All right, so now I'm outlining. And I'm just making those very skinny needles. If you did do one that is overlapping, be careful not to draw through the other needles because they're not see-through. And make sure you also do your branch. Now I'm going to spin my pine cone around, and I'm going to start this way because I think it's going to be easier than having my hand where the Sharpie is. I'm just going right over it. So you guys keep on working, adding all of your shapes to your pine cones. And make sure when you are all done tracing over everything, you erase any pencil marks that you see. They look like a bunch of little mountains all together. And I'm going to put one more right there. Okay, so now I have mine all Sharpied. I'm going to go in and erase. Now, make sure I have all my little areas done. Okay. I'm going to use colored pencil for this project. But if you don't have colored pencils, you can totally use crayons. I'm sorry. You can totally use crayons for this. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to start coloring in my pine cone. Crayons or colored pencils will work best for this project because with colored pencils you can mix and overlap a lot like crayons. And if I want it darker, I can use some grays And if I want it even darker, I can go in and just at the edges, create that shadow on the ends. And put those in. Just kind of where there's like creases. Like those would be the valleys. Now, the top part of I'm going to have all different colors from my colored pencil. Here's a tan. I'm going to use those, but I'm also going to kind of mix in a little bit of the brown. So you can see I didn't color super hard. And then I can mix in some of that tan. I can even add some tan down in here, but remember I like there to be a shadow down in these areas. And then you can even add a little orange if you want, just to kind of warm it up. You can add some yellow. The yellow makes it even warmer. So again, you are the artist. You are going to be adding your color. Okay. So again, I'm going to color brown down here. So these little top parts, that's where the lightest, the light is hitting it. That's the lightest part of your pine cone. And then it gets gradually darker as you work down. And I'm just going to keep on making it darker and darker and darker. And remember, don't rush through it. If you rush through it, it will show that you're rushing through it. So I'm going to add some, this is the gray. I'm going to add some of the black. The black really makes it kind of darker in those edges and grooves. You can also color circular to kind of get more of a gradual tone too. So again, I'm going to make it darker down in here, and then add some black just on the edges. And then in here, I'm going to add some tans. Even a little bit of orange. Some yellows. And then I can always tone it down if I feel like it's too bright. All I have to do is go in with some brown and tone it down. And I'm also going to see if I want to add a little, make it even lighter. I can just put a little bit of white. It's not really showing much on here, so you don't really have to do that. But the secret is starting out with your brown, putting that down here, and then adding a shadow, which makes it look much more realistic. So a brown, the black to make it more realistic, and the black's only at the bottom. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of brown to that tip. And then I'm going to add some tan. And a little bit of orange. And then that yellow. That yellow really makes it pop more. And now it looks a lot more realistic. Down in here, I'm going to put just a little bit more brown just on the edges and at the bottom. And it's a gradual coloring. So that means you're not going to be rushing through. You're just kind of picking up your tools, using them in different ways. But again, this is your shadow. Down in here. And this part is your highlight. And you're just going to keep on working up. And as you can see, this is going to take a couple days to do. So don't feel like you have to rush through it. For your needles, you'll want to finish this first before doing the needles, but I thought you'd like to see I'm going to make some light. I'm going to make some dark. And I think I even have a darker one. Yep. I can really make that one darker. If you want your needles to be even darker, you can add a kind of a bluish to it, and that will make it a little darker too. It still stays green, it just goes darker. So again, that is up to you, but work on your pine cone first and then your needles. So let's work on this first, and then we'll come back to the branch and the needles. Okay, on to the needles. I'm just using my colored pencils to color in the needles, and I want the needles to be different shades of green. So I'm not going to use just one. I'm going to use all different shades of green. And I can overlap to make my needles darker. I can use a blue, and that's going to make it a much darker green. And I'm also going to add color to my branch. I used brown. If I want to warm up that branch, I can add just a little bit, just a tiny little bit of orange. And even some yellow. When you overlap your colored pencils, it looks so much more realistic. I'm going to add just a little bit here. And then come in here Add a little bit more. And because these are such small shapes, such thin, narrow shapes, the colored pencils work great. They can get right in there. And I can put like one layer of color, then I can go in with a second layer and just make it much more opaque, which means I can't see through the white paper underneath. So go ahead and add the color to your needles.